Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. We are proud to present here Futures in Social Market Analytics, an uncorrelated source of predictive data on the eFutures platform. We're always trying to present different topics and educational webinars to provide you different points of view and different ways to look at the markets and just gather information so you can make decisions on what's going on in the market and the world. So we dedicated this webinar to provide you with some of the social market analytics from the team here and show you how you can use that with the eFutures platform. Before we get started, I just have a quick disclosure here that I need to go through. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Nothing presented today should be construed as investment advice or recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security or contract. Since we don't know everyone's investment objectives or risk tolerance, we are not endorsing any specific trading strategies. Security, derivative, and futures trading involves a substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Each investor must consider whether this is a suitable investment, since you may lose all or more than your initial investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Lightspeed is a division of Line Brokerage LLC. Line Brokerage LLC is not affiliated with these third-party market commentators, educators, or service providers. Data, information, and material content are provided for informational, educational purposes only. This content neither is nor should be construed as an offer, solicitation, or recommendation to buy or sell any securities or contracts. Any investment decisions made by the user through the use of such content is solely based on the user's independent analysis, taking into consideration your financial circumstances, objectives, and risk tolerance. Line Brokerage does not endorse or offer or recommend the services or commentator provided by the market contenders or service providers, and any information used to execute any trading strategy is solely based on independent analysis of the user. Okay, thank you. So for more information on a demo of the eFutures software, open an account with Lightspeed, division of Line Brokerage, please feel free to contact me, Rob Lifson at rlifson@linebrokerage.com. You can also email sales@linebrokerage.com as well. Feel free to reach out afterwards. You can ask some questions as we go. We're happy to address as they come in. And also just note, one lucky attendee will be randomly selected for a duffel bag. So make sure you stay to the end and we'll announce the raffle here at the end here. Today we have Joe Gitz, CFA. Joe is a pioneer in the emergence and growth of quantitative trading systems. Prior to launching Social Market Analytics, he co-founded Quantitative Analytics Inc., QA Direct, a market-leading provider of integrated database solutions for quantitative research and traders. So he has a lot of knowledge on how people interact and interpret information and how they apply that to making investment decisions. So we're definitely happy to have Joe here. I'm going to transfer the mic and the screen share over to Joe here, and we're going to get started. So thank you guys for attending, and here we go. I'm going to give Joe the mic here now. Okay, Joe, take it away.
All right, well, first off, Rob, thank you for having me. We're very grateful to Lightspeed and Line Brokerage for having me today, and I'm excited about the opportunity to offer our data on the eFutures platform. So you all should see an introduction page on your screen right now. If you don't, please drop me a question. So again, my name is Joe Gitz. I am CEO and one of the co-founders of Social Market Analytics. And the idea or the birth of the company was pretty straightforward. The vast majority of data being created is unstructured data or textual data, and more data was created in the last year, I'm sure you've all heard this, than in the entire history of data. So the ability to efficiently access, manipulate, and score this unstructured data can lead to excess returns for the individual trader. During this webinar today, I'm going to start with a general use of alternative data in finance, how it's being used, how it's growing. I'm going to talk about Social Market Analytics, our company, and what we do, how we do it, and what makes us unique in terms of a data provider. What social media analytics and what social media in general can offer every investor, and then how to use the SMA Heatmap on the eFutures platform. At any point in time, if you want to put some questions up on the question board, I'll answer them if I can. I'm sure everyone here is aware of Twitter and the impact of Twitter on the global markets, as specifically people tweeting about securities and trading and commodities and oil and soybeans and wheat. There are over 850 million tweets a day. And this heat map is really to illustrate basically where these tweets are coming from. And so as you can see, the red areas are highly correlated with financial centers. People are tweeting all over the world in real time and providing information on securities, prices, demand, supply for any of the commodities that are covered on the eFutures platform. So social market analytics is one of 5, excuse me, for 1 second. Is one of 5 licensed partners of Twitter. We do have access to all 850 million of those tweets on a daily basis, and we look or screen all of them, okay, as they come in, and I'll explain to you in a moment how that happens. So the idea behind our company and the data that we offer is really on the concept that social media is disrupting capital markets. And if you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. So you hear people tweeting about an oil refinery explosion. You hear people tweeting about what percentage of the grains are harvested, or what their fields look like, or whether they've been able to plant their winter wheat. You hear people speaking about treasuries and inverted yield curves and all the impacts that these can have on the various futures markets. And so you see time and time again in traditional media where the source of a particular story is Twitter, and it's happening more and more. So Twitter is the go-to source for breaking news and for information leading to security prices. So the challenge that you have on this is how it's going to be used and how you're going to clean it and make sure it's predictive of future price movements. Before I get into how we actually do that, this slide is rather interesting because it shows the growth of alternative data usage, and it's growing exponentially. This slide cuts off in 17, and it's continued to grow exponentially. The number of alternative data analysts, so these are analysts that specialize in looking at non-traditional data sources, whether it's news, whether it's satellites, whether it's crop photos, whether it's Twitter. The use of alternative data is growing exponentially, and the people that can do that specialty analysis is growing exponentially. And the number of investment funds employing alternative data is growing significantly as well. And this is significantly higher than it was in 17. The idea behind this is, with the advent of computer processing and cloud computing, the ability to process traditional data sets has become so optimized that the return available in these traditional data sets has decreased. If you look at the same data in the same way, at the same speed as everyone else, you're going to get the same returns. Alternative data is challenging in that it's not analyzed in the same ways that you get with your traditional data sets. And so the opportunities in alternative data is enormous. So at Social Market Analytics, we clean and listen in real time to the Twitter signals and deliver real-time social sentiment to hedge funds, asset managers, market makers, and risk managers. And this is a unique partnership that we're thrilled about, where we get to bring our data and the unique challenges to the Lightspeed platform for you guys to take advantage of, and we're really excited about it. All right, so how do we do it? This is the platform that we've created and patented. It's a 3-component platform. We get access on the left to the Twitter fire hose. And the Twitter fire hose is exactly that. It's 850 million tweets, and they are coming through in real time. It takes about, just as a piece of information, it takes about 7 seconds for a tweet to be sent and then processed through the Twitter infrastructure and posted out through their API. So we have access to that hose. The extractor that we developed is listening to that hose in real time and pulling off anything related to a topic that we're interested in. So for example, if we're interested in soybeans, we're listening in real time for soybeans, individual contracts and mentions of soybeans, people farming soybeans, anything that would tell us that a particular tweet is about the topic of soybeans, whether it's heating oil or cattle or hogs. We're listening to that in real time, and we're taking these individual messages or tweets and we're storing them in our database. The rule system that we created it's a Boolean system, inclusions, exclusions, and/ors, XORs. So there's a very complicated system that we use to identify individual tweets. Now, a tweet can have multiple securities, obviously, and then multiple evaluations for those securities. So that's part of the extraction process as well. The average future has about 15 different rules associated with how those tweets are filtered and put into the system. Now, the evaluator takes those messages and it looks at the accounts. So we learned pretty quickly that it's not just what's being said, but who's saying it as well. So we have a system that we've created that actually scores every account on 12 different metrics. And those metrics are how often they're retweeted, how often they're replied to. One of the metrics that we have is accuracy of their predictions. So if a particular account is talking positively about the price of oil, what percentage of time does oil move higher over a subsequent period of time? So if someone is maybe talking their book or doing something like that, our metrics will help us catch that and take that person out of our calculation methodology. But once a person has passed our 12 scoring system, those individual tweets are then scored. So we've created our own natural language processing engine, and we actually will read a tweet up to 8 different times to get the parts of speech correct, to get the subject, verb, adjective correct, and to score that individual tweet. Now, each tweet gets scored from -1 to +1 out to 4 decimal places. Most of those tweets hover around 0. What we're looking for is a group of outliers, very positive tweets or very negative tweets that tell us that the tone of that conversation has changed. So we screen the accounts, we look at the individual messages, we score the individual messages all in the evaluator, and then the calculator creates metrics that describe the current conversation relative to historical norms. Is the current conversation significantly more positive than normal? Or is the current conversation significantly more negative than normal? And what we found is when the conversation gets 2 standard deviations more positive, or up to 2 standard deviations more negative, those securities have a tendency to move higher or lower. And that's the source of prediction that we're talking about. When we've run our research on this data, we found that the signals that you generate using a Spearman-Range correlation of historical signals that you see versus social media data, or specifically our S factor, we found that this data is not correlated with traditional data sets. And the logic behind that is pretty straightforward. People are talking about everything from technicals. So they may be talking about support, resistance level. They may be talking about harvesting and what percentage of the wheats are planted or harvested. They may be talking about how much grain China is going to buy, how much grain are they going to buy from Brazil, the supply of oil or the storage levels for individual oil. And when you get that grouping of tweets and the different types of conversations, it gives you a really unique signal. So the metrics that we're publishing and the metrics that are on the eFutures platform are really describing that current conversation on that standard normal curve that I was just talking about. So what you'll see on the eFutures platform is we color gradient the data. And as you get to the right, the green area, you're going to see that what that's telling you is that the current conversation is significantly more positive than over the last 20 days. So we look at the last 24-hour tweets, we take those certified accounts, we score each individual tweet, and then we aggregate it over 24 hours, and we compare that data to a 20-day baseline. And what that gives us is a z-score. So we take the current value minus the average over 20 days, divided by the standard deviation. It gives us a level of tone of the conversation. Now, most of the conversations are going to be hovered on that top point of that standard normal curve. When it gets significantly more positive, 1 standard deviation, 2 standard deviations, it's going to be on the right side of the curve. And when it gets significantly more negative, it's going to be on the left side of the curve. We also do that for volume. There are certain commodities, your energies, your grains, your indexes, they get thousands and thousands of tweets from those accounts on a daily basis. And when we identify, or we take the number of tweets and put it on this standard normal curve, you're going to be able to identify when the volume of tweets for that particular commodity is significantly larger than normal, or when the volume of tweets for that particular commodity are significantly more negative than normal. That indicates some of the strength of the signal. And we'll show you this as the last thing of this presentation. We'll show you the real-time values. So what can social media offer every investor? Well, it's a leading indicator of security performance across all asset classes. We're talking about the eFutures platform. It's a significant leading indicator for futures contracts. You see it. It's consistent across time, and it's consistent across the different asset classes. Bullet point number 2, securities being discussed more positively on Twitter, they go on to outperform, and securities being discussed more negatively on Twitter, they go on to underperform. Okay, so and that conversation it changes on a real-time basis. So you'll see on the eFutures platform that those colors will change throughout the day. The size of those boxes indicating the volume will change throughout the day. You'll see securities that start the day with a significantly positive conversation. Something breaks, whether it's a trade deal conversation or something's happening, and you'll see the sentiment start to change. And it'll go from green to red or red to green throughout the day. And you'll see the commodities change over time. The commodity prices change over time. So this is something that you're going to want to have up on your eFutures platform throughout the day. It'll help you in your trading. New trading ideas. So if a particular commodity is all of a sudden has a huge positive sentiment, or it has a huge relative volume and maybe no significant sentiment, that gives you new trading ideas. Whether you want to trade the underlying, whether you want to trade options, it gives you new trading ideas. So maybe it's a commodity that you're not planning on trading that day, and it gives you a security that maybe you can come in and do some quick trading on. Position monitoring. So this is kind of the risk portion of it. So if you have a position in any individual security, I said earlier that news breaks on Twitter. If you see a significant change in your sentiment, it's going to give you a heads up that maybe something's up. Maybe you want to look either on Twitter, or you want to look and see what the news is for that particular security, and it can help you manage your risk. And then trade execution. If you're planning on buying a commodity and you see that the sentiment is red, maybe you have a little bit more time to lag into your position. You're not quite as quick to execute. If on the contrary, if it's green and the sentiment is changing quickly and there's a lot of volume, maybe you want to execute your trade a little bit earlier than you had originally planned. So between the sentiment and the amount of conversation, it can give you an edge in your trading on the eFutures platform. So what does it look like? So this is a picture of the heat map that you see on the eFutures platform, and there are a couple things that I want to illustrate here. So the size of the box indicates the relative volume. So that means the volume that you see relative to historical values. That's what we call our SV score. It's volume on that standard normal curve. Okay, so when the box is large relative to the other securities, that means there's a lot of relative volume on Twitter, not trade volume. These are tweet volumes. Okay. The color indicates the sentiment. So in this case, there's a large amount of volume and it's positive sentiment on the Nikkei. Okay. That's what the size of the box and the color of the box is telling you. Now, if you look at the mini Dow, that has a large relative volume, so it's a significant relative volume for the mini Dow. However, the sentiment is negative. So the conversation on Twitter is more negative than normal. Okay, so maybe it's 1.5, 2 standard deviations more negative than normal. And so the idea is the Nikkei is going to move higher, high relative volume, and the mini Dow is going to move lower, negative sentiment and a significantly higher volume. Okay, and you can see in the red box are the actual values. So sentiment is high positive. It's 2.29 standard deviations more positive than normal. So that's a high positive sentiment. Not a large change, so the sentiment change is pretty neutral on here. It's not, that's not illustrated in the particular box. And then extreme positive volume. There's a lot of Twitter volume for the Nikkei right now. Okay. And some of the bullet points. So the data updates every minute. So it's automatically updating, it's automatically changing size, colors, positions. The color of the box indicates the tone of the conversation, as I mentioned. So green represents a positive conversation, and the red represents a negative conversation. So a positive conversation means that the current conversation over the last 24 hours is more positive than it was over the last month. Okay, so that's what the greener it is, the more positive it is. So and there are different bands. There's always an English translation. So high positive, there's neutral, positive, high positive. Okay, at different levels of standard deviation. And then the red represents a negative conversation. So the current conversation, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is more negative than it was over the last month. And then the size of the box, as I mentioned, is relative tweet volume. It's not trading volume or contract volume, it's tweet volume. Are there more tweets discussing that? Are there more tweets discussing this particular commodity than there usually are? So whether it's around the crop report or whether it's around trade discussions, it's the conversation on the value of that particular commodity is higher than normal. Okay. So when you click on a box, so in this particular case, the Nikkei was clicked on, the scores, the individual sentiment scores are appearing in the lower corner. There's a help screen. So in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to jump back. So in the upper right-hand corner, how to use the SMA Heatmap brings up this particular screen. And so the size of the box means that, again, it's volume, and the color of the box indicates the sentiment or the tone of the conversation. And again, it goes back to that slide. So this is a standard normal curve. If we all go back to our basic statistics class, and we're identifying when the conversation basically gets outside of that norm. Most commodities on any given day will have a neutral sentiment, and you can see that in the prior heat map. Most of them are neutral-ish. Most commodities have a neutral sentiment on any given day. It's when that gets outside of those neutral levels that it's predictive. So how to use sentiment? And then how to use volume. And you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, you click on that box and the individual values will appear. Okay. Now, I could take some questions now if there are any. Otherwise, I can jump to the eFutures platform and give you a quick illustration of this particular functionality. So I'll give it a second to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, so I'm going to jump here for a second. All right, now I have it up on the screen, so I'm going to go to, I have it up on the screen right now, but I'm going to go back and show you how to get this particular screen. So you go to the eFutures.com, you can log in, or I'm going to go to the eFutures CQG login. And I am going to go to the demo page. This is obviously customizable. So I'm going to go to the eFutures homepage. So here you see the homepage, and it's updating in real time for me. If I want to add the social market analytics heat map, I click on quotes, SMA heat map. In this case, I have one already open. Open a new page and proceed. And now the SMA heat map is updating. So this is real-time data. It's updating as we speak. So right now, hogs have a negative sentiment, and the relative volume is large. So a lot of people are talking about hog prices in a negative manner. Here's the VIX, dollar index, E-mini S&P. And so you can see there's a lot of different commodities on here. You click it, and it shows the individual values on the lower portion of your screen, and you could take this and incorporate it into your trading activity. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, if there are no questions, I'd like to thank you all for coming. And if you have the need for any additional information or you'd like to sign up for an eFutures account, please, as Rob mentioned, reach out to him. And we look forward to using this data and helping you with your trading.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so guys, if everyone has questions or want to test out a demo and take a look at the functionality, certainly please contact us. If you have questions, we'll certainly pass them on to SMA guys and to Joe here and get you some answers. So please test us out, see how you like it, see if it's something you can incorporate. Joe, we appreciate you taking some time to show this over to us. Hopefully we can get some users taking a look and see how we can get them to benefit from it.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night.